Hello everyone, my name's Kevin, and I wanted to do a tutorial today on the use of dForce, specifically applying dForce to a certain situation I ran into in the creation of my visual novel. This here is a scene, one of the last scenes of that novel, but I wanted to go through the use of dForce in a particular situation, and hopefully you'll find the information helpful and useful. And here is the lovely, amazing Captain Tanya Sadea here to help demonstrate the use of dForce. She's the captain, overall leader of the Multiverse Response Unit, who you will see in my upcoming MRU Chronicles visual novel. Hey, Tanya. Let's get started. Okay, so here we are in the scene. This is one of the last scenes in the first episode of the visual novel. As you can see, the lovely Captain Tanya Sadea there. She's holding a t-shirt that we're going to apply dForce to, and we're basically going to have it draping from her hand and fall onto the staircase, hitting the stairs. And hopefully if I got it positioned right, it's going to drape over the step there. So what we need to do is basically apply dForce. We don't have it set up here, so let's do that right now. If you come over here and you select File, or actually it's Edit. Let me zoom in there for you. You select Edit and then go to Object, and then we select Geometry, and there's three options you can choose from, okay, as you can see here. If I move over, you can see there. Basically, you have three options. You have Static Surface, Dynamic Surface, and Dynamic Surface Add-on. And the one we want to use is Dynamic Surface. Static Surface is for applying a modifier to the object that your dForce item is colliding with. In this case, that would be the staircase or the floor of this scene or set. And you use it to determine the amount of friction on the surface, in this case, the step. So we can make it more like glass or metal where the cloth would slide easily on it, or we could make it, I guess, like more rubbery and increase the friction so the shirt doesn't slide around. We're not going to do that in this case. I think it's going to work fine based on other simulations I've run. Dynamic Surface is one we're going to be using. It applies dForce, and we're going to simulate the t-shirt here falling to the ground. Dynamic Surface Add-on is more for, from what I understand, it's like applying springs and other three-dimensional applications. You can use it, let's say you've got a t-shirt that it's basically opened up, or some kind of shirt, and you want to connect it so the front of it, where it's open, you want to like zip it up or button it up. You can apply a dForce add-on modifier, and what that does is it keeps the front of the shirt connected despite what the character's doing, or if the shirt or jacket falls to the ground or clothing item, then it will keep those surfaces connected. You're basically gluing the vertices between both fronts of the jacket or the shirt or the clothing. It allows the polygons to move fine, but it keeps those vertices connected in relation to one another along a polygon line. I can get into that more later. I haven't tried it. I have a good idea of how you would apply it, but the one we want to use, and that was just a brief description, give you an idea of what it's about. Hope you can see that. It might be kind of blocked there, but the one we want to use is Dynamic Surface right here. There. And there's another way you can get to that. You can actually come over to here. You can go to this hamburger icon, I guess they call it. You can come down, Edit, and then go to Geometry, and then, Edit, Geometry, and then you have your three dForce add-ons right here. So like I said, we're doing Dynamic Surface, and how you can tell that the dForce is applied is through the Parameters tab here. You can see there's a simulation parameter here. This isn't here. You won't see this here before dForce is applied. And you can also change and select the type of dForce modifier you're applying there, just like you did from the menu. And just in case you're interested in following along or want to To try this yourself, you can go to Smart Content and you can come down. This t-shirt is just part of the Genesis 8 Starter Essentials. I think it's made for a male character, but I have applied a auto fit to the female character, done some deforms, done some geometry editing, so it tucks nicely within her shirt. There's some work I had to do for that, but we won't worry about that here. I can do a tutorial on that if you're interested in how to use the deformer, geometry editing, deleting, and to make that work. But I've also applied a shader to the t-shirt. So this is not the default color is black, but we'll go back. And the second way you can tell if the dForce is applied is go to surfaces here. If you go under surfaces of the t-shirt, you will see as you scroll down these peach colored parameters here. All of these were added when dForce was applied, and they're all dForce controls, okay, that you can use to affect how the simulation works. So we know through these two, through this, that we have dForce applied. So what we're going to do is the first thing is just simulate the clothing hanging from her hand in a natural position that looks physically correct, because the shirt's not going to look in this shape if she's not wearing it or there's no one in it. So we have to simulate through dForce the clothing or shirt hanging from her hand. That's what we're going to do first. So if we come over here, go to the first frame. I'm not happen to be on frame 30. I could be on frame 0. The reason I'm on frame 30 is because I did some other simulations that I don't want to reset here. And you'll notice on the staircase, there's some clothing items here. One of them, this is the Atlas pants that you can get from the DAZ 3D store. That already has dForce applied, okay? And one of the things we have to do is, if we only want to apply a simulation to this t-shirt, we have to make every other item in the scene that has dForce applied, we have to freeze its simulation. And how you can do that is, in this case, if I click on this item here, the pants, you'll see if we go over here, pants right there. If we go over to simulation, we have under the simulation in the parameters tab, we have freeze simulation. You can, normally that's turned off, you can turn it on. So what that does is it tells the dForce algorithm not to affect that. It's already set in its current position. Don't re-simulate that, because if it has to simulate 2 items, it's going to take even longer. So we'll just leave it like that. And the only other item in the scene is the t-shirt. So we are going to run the dForce simulation on the t-shirt. So let's do that. If you come over here to the simulation settings tab. Now, if you don't have this tab up, one of the things you can do is you can right click in this area. I don't have any free space to really right click and bring up another pane. So you can also come over here to Window, Panes tabs, and all of the panes you can add are here. And you see simulation settings. Let's see if we can zoom in on that one. That may be a little bit further away. I'm sorry. Menu. Doesn't really show, but you'll see over here, simulation settings. So you select that and it will add the tab wherever it will add the tab in there. So we have simulation settings in here. That might have taken it away, actually. Hold on a second. Sorry. So let's go back. Now simulation settings are in there. So if we go to look at everything, one of the things that I've always heard watching tutorials and reading information in the forums and online was to turn start bones from memorized pose off. What that really is if you memorize a character's pose by going to edit object or edit figure, you can memorize a figure's current pose, and then you can apply that pose that's memorized to the character. There's some issues related to that I've seen others have. I'm not going to be using this right now because I'm just going to start from the pose she's in. So we won't have to worry about that. Also, we're just going to simulate from the current frame because it's not going to be falling or anything. We just want to get the shirt in a position to where it looks like it's hanging from her hand. So let's go ahead and do that. Everything's set up fine. The other thing I want to mention, there's 2 things, is that by default, I believe there's a multiplier for frames per second multiplier. So if you have your multiplier, or if you have your frame set, I have the current, can't see it, but I have the current frame per second set to 30 in my timeline. this basically multiplies the frames for the simulation by whatever's in the timeline. So it's going to be a 60 frame per second clothing simulation. I'm fine with that. It looks good, but you can increase or lower or raise that however you want. And I think everything's fine. We're going to start, that's off. We're going to do it from the current frame. Okay, so we have everything set up. We should be ready. Now, because the shirt is hanging and intersecting, the mesh of the shirt is hanging and intersecting from the mesh of the character's hand, then dForce automatically assumes it's to be connected to that object. So it's actually going to drape from her hand rather than falling to the ground, which is what we want to have happen. So we're just going to run this simulation, which should run pretty quickly here. And then after that's done, we will go and do the second part of the simulation, which is the shirt dropping to the floor and basically colliding with the floor. So you'll see it's working here. So we'll be back when this is done. The next step is to export this shirt as an OBJ. So we need to make sure over here that we have our shirt selected. So let's come over here, scroll to the basic wear t-shirt, and then we are going to go over to our file menu and select export. And we want to make sure that we have wavefront object or OBJ selected here from the dropdown. So you select that and give it a file name. In this case, we'll call it t-shirt. Okay. Save that. Now I've saved it previously, but I'm going to go through the steps to show you how this is done. So we save that. Yes. And what you want to do is you want to make sure that you have this filter object selected and you choose from the drop down here selected roots. What that does is it over here, if you look in the scene tab, it selects or it only exports the objects you have selected in the scene tab as OBJ. So the only object we have selected is the t-shirt. Therefore, it's the only item that's going to be exported as an OBJ from the scene. So select accept, and it just takes a few seconds if you just one OBJ or object or one item in the scene. So then what we have to do is we have to re-import it. And it's going to be, what that does is it turns the item in for it's a rigged item, and it turns it into a prop, which is not rigged, but it's going to be in the shape of the shirt you see here, deformed based on what dForce has applied to the shirt through the simulation we ran. So if we come over here, we select import here, and we choose the OBJ file we saved the t-shirt, and we're going to bring that back in. We open it, and I'm going to say select DAZ Studio because that's what we exported it from, and everything else can remain default. Select accept, and we're going to see that if you look over here in the scene tab, we're going to see the t-shirt has been brought back in as a prop, an unrigged prop. This was what it was before, which is a rigged prop. Now it is just a prop without any rigging. That's okay because we don't need it to be rigged because we're not going to apply it to any character. It's just dropping to the floor as part of the animation. So if we hide this, we'll see the t-shirt is there. And the good thing is it's in exactly the same position in the scene as the original rigged shirt was or is. So what I can do is I can just go ahead and delete that because I'm not going to need that right now. So delete the rigged t-shirt that we used to create this prop when we exported it. And now we're going to apply dForce to this prop we created. There's a number of ways to apply dForce. I'm going to do it this way this time. And go over here, select this hamburger icon in the scene tab or this part of the window. Select that and choose edit geometry, and we're going to go add a dForce modifier dynamic surface. Okay, so we're doing the same thing we did before for the rigged t-shirt, but now we're applying it to the prop that we exported and then imported back in. So if you come down here and look, go to General, we can see simulation is there. The right add-on type, or the right modifier type is selected for dForce. And everything looks good. We come over here to surfaces and we can see t-shirt. Come down here and all the peach colored parameters have been added. And everything there and everything's good. Now, one of the things I do want to mention, if you look over here, okay, you see this self-collide is turned on. One of the things I've noticed with applying dForce to items that aren't originally created with dForce, because there's some items from the DAZ Studio store or the DAZ 3D store that have dForce, that are already made with dForce. If you apply it later, what I've noticed is if you have this self-collide turned on, it can create issues during the simulation. I noticed that when I was simulating for the character here, Captain Sadea, I was simulating it and I didn't have her fingers touching the mesh of the shirt. And when it dropped down and when the shirt finally touched her fingers, then the mesh of the shirt exploded. I also see that happen if I run the simulation when the shirt drops to the floor. As soon as it touches the floor, the mesh explodes. The mesh just goes crazy and it doesn't look like a shirt anymore. The polygons shoot off in all kinds of directions and it just isn't right. So one thing I do is I turn off self-collide. Now, there is also a collision offset here that determines the distance that polygons in the mesh have to be from one another for the dForce algorithm to calculate colliding polygons. That is set. I just leave it at the default and I turn self-collide off and it runs fine. If you know how to fix this, without having to turn self-collide off, then please let me know in the comment section. Like I said, I'm not an expert, but these are the things I know how to do to make this stuff work. So what we're going to do now is we're going to run a dForce simulation. Let me back out here. We're going to run a dForce simulation and we're going to do it over the frames we have set in the timeline. Usually 1 second for a shirt dropping to the floor is plenty of time, or 30 frames in this case, because I am the animation is set for 30 frames per second. So we're going to run from 30 over here, as you can see right here, 30 to 60 frames. And we're going to change the simulation from using current frame to use the animated, or use the frames we have set up in the timeline, which is 30 frames, 30 to 60 frames, frame 30 to frame 60. So we're going to use that and we're going to leave everything the same. The thing we have to do is we have to hide Captain Sadea in this, because the mesh of, basically her mesh, her fingers are intersecting with the t-shirt. And as long as that's the case, if you run a simulation, the shirt is going to continue to hang there. It's not going to simulate where it falls to the ground. But if you turn off the character here, which we're going to do right here, we're going to turn off Captain Sadea. And if she's off, then it's like she's not there. So the dForce isn't going to include her and include basically her mesh in the algorithm. So it's going to allow the shirt to drop to the floor. So we're going to do that. And we still have, for this right here, we still have free simulation. So it should just be the shirt hitting the staircase. So let's do it. Simulate. Okay. This will take a little bit longer to run. It's going to go through frames in the timeline and it's going to drop to the floor. So there's more simulation that has to occur. I'm going to let this run and be back as soon as it's done. Okay, so the simulation completed successfully. I brought Captain Sadea back into the scene here, and all I did was just unhide her. So one thing I do want to mention, this is kind of a cool tip that I learned from someone else, another content creator. If you select a item and you click Control before clicking the eye icon, it actually unhides not only that item, but everything parented to that item as well. And that was a huge time saver for me, because I was having to go in before I realized that and hide and unhide things individually in addition to unhiding the character. So that saved a huge amount of time. But if we run this now, you can see that she drops the shirt and it falls to the staircase. Now, it doesn't quite drape over the staircase. One of the things I noticed when I was running the dForce simulation, I have to figure this out, but the shirt, when it was draped over, like most of it is draped over the edge of a step, and it would actually wind up falling off. It's like the simulation couldn't handle it. So in this case, it's falling directly on the step. In the case of the other t-shirt I did earlier, which was another character that's part of the squad, her name is Ming Xiaohuai. She's not in this scene because she's actually went and into the hot tub at this point to enjoy her time off from her duties. So her t-shirt here does actually drape over just a little bit, but I think I was having a problem because the way I positioned this shirt, most of it was going to be off the staircase, so the simulation the physics would naturally have it falling off, and it was just, I don't know, the dForce didn't seem to be able to handle it. Maybe some additional settings would have corrected that, and once I figure that out, I'll definitely make a tutorial discussing it. In this case, it looked like it was fine. It fell directly on the step, and we can zoom in and I can show you what that looks like. There's a few other things I want to discuss related to this as well. If you come over here to perspective view, you see the shirt is right there, and the simulation, it falls and hits the floor, which is really cool, you know? And the cool thing is, it's starting the simulation from a position where the shirt is already deformed. And this is, with the OBJ, that's the way I could figure out how to do it. Like I said, if you guys know of a way to do this without having to export as an OBJ, that certainly would save time. One of the things I do want to mention related to dForce is, let's say you run the simulation from a single frame to get the shirt in the shape it's in now, and you want to reset it. Well, you don't have any way to go back to any other keyframes because you just simulated on that keyframe. What you can do is come over here, first select the item in your scene here, your scene tab, select the item here, which in this case is the shirt prop. Right click on the simulation tab and go to dForce, and then you come down here to clear objects. So if you want to just clear the simulation from the object you have selected in the scene tab over there, then you can clear selected objects. And what that will do is it will clear the simulation entirely from the selected object and put it back into its default position. So like I said, if you're simulating from a single frame, the current frame, you don't have any other frames to go back to. So you can clear the simulation off the object this way. The version, I guess I should have mentioned this when I first started the video, but the version of DAZ Studio I'm using is 4.15.0.30. It is the absolute latest at the time this video was created. I can't think of anything else that I was going to say related to this, but thank you, Captain Tanya Sadea, for becoming or agreeing to demonstrate dForce simulation here. I'm going to do regular videos like this. I plan to create the videos over the weekend and upload them every Monday. So I'll have regular tutorial uploads. It takes a bit of work because I'm getting used to doing these tutorials, which I haven't really done before. I've mostly been working on my visual novel, but I do enjoy it. I hope you find this information helpful. Also, please, if you like this and you want to see more tutorials, please click the subscribe button, click the bell notification icon so you get notified when these videos are available. Also, you'll get notified when the first episode of the visual novel, the MRU Chronicles, will be released soon. If you have an idea for something you'd like to see, and I'd be happy to do a tutorial on it. If it's something I don't know, I'll be happy to learn it and figure it out and show it here on the channel. So everyone, thank you so much for taking the time to check out this video. It does mean a lot to me. Have a great rest of your week, and I hope to see you in the next tutorial. Take care.